welcome back to Match Modern. I am your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
What's going on, everybody? I'm here to talk about one of my favorite things in the whole world, and that's my favorite types of episodes of Magic.
We're going to talk about our favorite types of episodes. So my personal favorite is the set reviews. I think those are the ones where, you know, we really dig in. We get to come up with new cool ideas for people to play off. No, we're talking about the most iconic cards for each color in Magic. So basically, over the last week and a half on TikTok, I've been doing a series of kind of picking out what I think the most iconic card for each color is in Magic. I've now finished the last one today, which is the black one. If you want to go check those out, TikTok at Kess Wiley, follow me. I need more TikTok followers, but I'm making a lot of content there now, apparently. But it was a really cool conversation. We got a lot of feedback on it, and I wanted to get Ben's thoughts on that, and then go through the kind of the different subjects for each color. And we'll go through each one of them all in one video. And one, Ben said this is his favorite type of content. It's because his favorite type of content is saying his favorite things. He likes having favorites, which in his defense, as do I. So that's what we're going to talk today.
We do well with episodes and topics like this. It's like legacy content, which is not the format, but like legacy, like it's forever content. I love having conversations like this. So, you know, as we get into it, I want to give a big thank you to the nobles of House Modern. Pinkies up, as we like to say. Thank you, guys. And of course, if you don't know what we're talking about, go to patreon.com/theMMcast. It is an incredibly helpful way for you guys to support what we do here and to keep the show running, keep the YouTube channel and the podcast. We do this as a labor of love, and that support really, truly does help. If you're checking this out, you want to help us out, do that. Alex, when we talk about iconic, I want to define what that means before we get into our full debate. You're saying historically in the history of Magic, like the card in your mind that would be associated with that color most closely, like the most famous card that represents that color?
Yeah, I think that's a fair represent. Like what card? So the way the conversation started is, like, it was like over two different things that one was, you know, if the power 9 was the power 13 and we got to add one card from Alpha that was rare, was like the two guidelines, but from every color, right? Like, because right now Alpha has 6 artifacts and 3 blue cards. And like, if I was, and obviously that happened due to tournament magic at the time and the rarity of things and just like what effects were so overpowered versus other things. But in context, looking back, there are at least a card from every color that like is iconic from that era and does it doesn't represent necessarily the color, because for instance Wheel of Fortune is the red one, or the one that we came up with, and I think it's just the best option there. But like, you know, Magic these days, if they were to pick their marketing power 9, they would probably want one of every color. So that started, and I think, and we can talk about that too, and then that also then evolved into a kind of a conversation on them adding Counterspell, and we'll start with blue in this conversation, to Modern, and I was super hyped, and then I talked about how I thought that was the most iconic blue card of all time. To my feeling is Counterspell is the card that is representative of blue, and then there was a whole discussion of it in the comments, and then that got me into making that series. But yeah, so I guess we could, blue. So, well, before we start with blue, I guess let me without leaving everyone hanging. I guess I could be like, oh, and if you want to know the rest of my power 9, go to my TikTok, or power 13. So I picked, and it was annoying because the best 2 options were Demonic Tutor and Channel for green and black, but they're uncommons. And I felt like you had to stick to the rare thing, because from Alpha, the reason those were expensive, the reason behind the Power 9 is really fascinating. They were the most expensive cards in the set, and they were also exactly how many cards fit on a single sheet in your binder. That's why 9 was picked. But as far as other expensive cards from that era or that set, like the only way you could be expensive is to be rare. And it started with Balance, actually. Balance was like the easy first choice. Like, I don't think there's another white rare that's close to that. It's banned in every format. That felt also good to me. Like, a card needed to be banned everywhere. And so like all the other Power 9 are everything but Time Twister. And then Wheel of Fortune. And then for black, it was Mind Twist, which like is fine. It had every format at the time, it kept being banned. Like, it is a multi-banned format card. And then green was Fast Bond.
So to clarify, though, you're talking about a specific designation based on alpha rares. Like, that's where the conversation started.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of shift that to Magic all time. representative of the color, and that's across all formats, Magic's history, which probably will have some inspiration from what you're talking about. I would think. I'm sure there'll be a relationship between some of those ideas, but we have a lot more flexibility there. That's an interesting conversation, the one you're mentioning there.
Yeah, yeah. Like the red one could easily be like,
we'll save it for when we get to red,
from more reason. Like it can range anywhere in Magic's history. Just like, what card would you pick that feels the most representative? And that just started with that Power 9 conversation. A lot of people brought up Birds of Paradise as an option there, and I think there the issue is just like it's legal everywhere and has been reprinted too many times. But yes, all right. So blue, I said Counterspell. There are a lot of options. A lot of people thought it was Ancestral Recall to them, right? Because it is in the Power 9. It's the best blue Power 9 card. To me, it's just, no one's ever going to play it. The amount of people that have seen that card cast in the history of Magic is like less than the amount of people that have gone to the Super Bowl. And like, at least in person. The card is obviously very emblematic. That then leads maybe to Brainstorm being an option, right? Or one of the kind of the top of the card filtering ones. People also brought up like Force of Will over Counterspell, or different card draw. And then there was one other, like Jace the Mind Sculptor, if you wanted to go more recent. Like there was a lot of different options for blue.
I think if you're going to look at blue and you're going to try to figure out, like, because Counterspell comes to mind right off the bat when you mention it. And I think for all the reasons you mentioned, all three of the blue Power 9 cards, just none of them are commonly played enough that I feel like they actually represent the game historically to all players. Like, I mean, Commander has maybe boosted the actual people that understand what Time Twister even does factor. But for a long time, like, Time Twister was like a card that if you asked most people what it did, they couldn't even tell you. It just was not a card. Like, people knew it was expensive, but it wasn't known in the way that Recall and Time Walk were. But again, I think all three of those cards, just because of the fact that like no one really plays them, they aren't commonly played across many formats, I feel like it's a harder qualification. Counterspell makes a lot of sense to me, but my issue with Counterspell is it's not just clearly the best version of the card. Like it's totally representative of blue. There's so many good counterspells. There's so many played counterspells in all formats. I would even go as far as to say that like Mana Drain is like almost as iconic on some level. Like I almost feel like Mana Drain,
but it's not as
almost takes the spot.
It's not as simple, and Mana Drain goes to the back problem, right? Until very recently, most people hadn't gotten to play with a Mana Drain. I think like I don't think it's just the best is important to hear, right? Like I think that when we get, like for instance, my green pick is not the best version of what that card would be. Though people argued that maybe that should be the pick, and like I would say there's at least 4 better versions of it off of the top of my head. We'll talk to that later, and I'll get to that in a second. But to me, it's like Counterspell. If I were to show someone Counterspell and then explain what it does, they're going to get a pretty strong idea. And like the only other, like other than that card draw, but a pretty strong idea on what blue is about, right? They're about being tricky, stopping my stuff at front, being very control-y, and like using my magic against me. And yes, you could do Force of Will. Yes, you could do Mana Drain. Yes, you could do. I think those are the two real combat. Like, if we're going to be honest, the ones in contention there. But I think like that like comes to they're weird and power level and not very simple, and they're not like a great poster child for what a color is doing. And Counterspell is still good to this day, right? Like it hasn't also been outclassed. Like, yes, Mana Drain is good, and yes, Force of Will is good, but Counterspell still sees Minor play and Legacy will be a good card, like a great card in Modern once it's printed, and sees a ton of play in Commander.
I think Counterspell is absolutely, of the ones we talked about, I think it's the fairest choice for blue. It's weird because I feel like over the years, it's almost lost some of its credibility. It's like not as special of a card as I think it felt to me like 5 or 6 years ago. Just there's so many played counterspells, but I do think if we're talking about the iconography of Magic, the history of Magic, it's hard to think that there's something that represents blue more. Because like if we're really going to be real about it, we talk about, I think, every color, blue is represented by card draw and counterspells. Those are the two things that I think blue like really feels like if you are a blue player, you probably like to draw cards and you probably like having some amount of permission. But there isn't really a blue card draw spell that feels iconic, because as much as I think like Ancestral is very iconic, and it's just no one ever plays the card. So then it feels like Brainstorm's not. I mean, Brainstorm is very iconic for one format and it's loved in that format. But like yeah, I would say that Brainstorm is only a hair more iconic really at this point than like Ponder. And I don't think either of those cards stands up to Counterspell.
I
Jace the
think
Mind Sculptor is the face of blue, but
that's the other card I would pick, to be honest.
yeah.
Is I think or Snapcaster Mage. Like I do think like there's a conversation
Yeah.
of all 5 of the like 2-drop cycle could work, though the red one's weird. But I think Jace does what you said, right? It shows what it's doing. It's tricky, it's smart, it's using, like, it's drawing cards, it has some interaction, but it's only temporary. Like, he could be a competitor for this effect. I still think it's counterspell, but
no, I vote Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Okay.
Now that I really think about it and I put it into context of like what we're talking about, the reason, the literal reason is exactly what we just talked about. Counterspell wasn't legal in Modern until like right now. It isn't played in Legacy as the premier counterspell. It's not played in Vintage as the premier counterspell. It's an iconic card really from a different era. Like, it's probably not iconic.
But that's because it hasn't been printed into Standard because it was too powerful, and it hasn't been printed into Modern until now. Like, the moment it's in Modern, it'll become the defining counterspell of the format.
I always say this is like the conversation you have when you try to establish, like, is somebody like an A-lister or not? You poll like 100 random people in a bar, right? You just ask every single one of them, have you heard of this person? Like, I would say the same thing. If you ask 100 like Magic players at AGP tomorrow, right? Like, which of these 2 cards have you played more times? Or like, I think Jace just absolutely wins.
No, I disagree. I think if you like took a poll of 100 Magic players and said, which of these 2 cards have you cast more? Or what are all of the abilities on this card? Like, I think people get Counterspell before you get Jace. I mean, like, partly because Jace has a lot of abilities, but like, and then take that out of that context and actually go to a bar and ask,
well,
no, but like,
go to a bar now.
Or go to like a party and like, oh, some, like, if you go to any player who like played Magic once in a while or like touched it or dabbles but isn't like inundated in the community, they absolutely know what Counterspell does and they have no idea what Jace does.
I mean, I think it's fair. I guess when I think about iconic, the reason that Jace for me wins the battle is that he's been on the box and the packs and like the face of so many sets now in the last 10 years.
But that's Jace.
I think that he's taken on,
right? Like,
Jace is the face of Magic.
But Jace the Mind Sculptor is not his only card, and arguably
his most famous card, though.
Just because it was banned out of a form. Jace Ballarand, like original Jace, baby Jace. Like, there's been other Jaces that have seen a lot of play.
He's more famous than Mind Sculptor. There's no way.
That's fair. Okay. I mean, like, I don't think like Jace's prevalence in Magic is beyond just the fact that Jace the Mind Sculptor was one of the best planeswalkers ever printed. If that was true, Teferi would be, as at that same position, which it's close, but like, he's had multiple cards that are arguably better than Jace, or even better, actually. Oko would be the face of Magic. That's the actual card. And like, he's not, right? Like, the Jace is a main character of the story and featured multiple times. Oko just happens to have the best card ever printed of the type.
I also will add, though, I think this is actually very significant. Jace the Mind Sculptor was originally printed 11 years ago. So we've had Jace the Mind Sculptor now around as an image, as a talking point, banned out of a Standard, like, huge deal when it was printed into, it was unbanned in Modern, big chase card in multiple Master sets. Like, I think it's been around long enough that it has the iconic. I would give you, like, those are the 2.
Yeah. Like, Oko has most of the things you just said, up to the fact that it's only 2 years old, but it's been banned in every. In fact, it's been banned in more formats.
But it's newer, so it's not as iconic.
Yeah,
so I would say.
Well, but I don't think it ever will be, because Oko is never supposed to be Jace was positioned to be the Mickey Mouse of Magic the Gathering. Right, like, from a marketing perspective, forget Jace the Mind Sculptor. Jace Ballarand was positioned from the very beginning, and then they transitioned very recently to make Chandra a little bit more of what this is. But Jace, for a very long time, like, multiple pack front cards. He's actually the artwork on most copies of Counterspell, regardless of Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah.
So, like, yes, Jace the Mind Sculptor, the card, is a big deal, but Jace's prevalence has much more to do with Jace being a main character of the story than the fact that he just had one busted card, because then Ren and 6, then Oko would be just as iconic. And Oko did more damage to more formats more quickly than Jace ever did.
But I mean, Oko is just invalidated because it's too new. Iconic has to mean even something to Magic players from a long.
Well, but I'm not saying Oko is iconic. I'm saying that Jace the Mind Sculptor's like iconicness level is in part due to the character Jace versus Counterspell, which is iconic regardless of Jace.
Agree. So would you vote Counterspell or Jace for this?
Counterspell. Sticking to my
I
guns.
vote Jace.
You could have gotten me to go
I
to
vote Jace.
Brainstorm, but yeah, okay, that's fair. You vote Jace. All right, there we go. So in the comments, tweet at us. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
In the comments, let us know which blue card you think the most iconic. Or, am I right? Is Ben right? Are we both wrong? And you're like, no, guys, it's Brainstorm. You guys are idiots. Is it Treasure Cruise? And we're just all crazy.
I did think about it.
Next card is green. I'm not going to Uberg order. I'm here to piss the internet off today. Green is the color I was mentioning before, where my pick, and we don't have to get into that because I do want to go over some of the different options, but my pick for what I think the most iconic green card is of all time is definitely not the best version of that card, even in the color. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. But what would you, off the top of your head, say some of what you think the most iconic green cards are of all time are?
When I try to think about this, so again, same conversation that we had, right? Which is like, what does green do? So green, I feel like mana creatures are probably the most iconic thing green has that other colors don't. So like Llanowar Elf is one that comes to mind, but if I'm going to say that, then I think it's just Birds of Paradise. Like Birds of Paradise for me feels like that's the staple. It's like one or the other though, probably feels like I couldn't think of another green card. Like some of the options that come to mind that feel like they're all-time legacy level green cards, or like not legacy of the format, but
damn it.
Yeah, exactly. Like significant cards historically, like, Eternal Witness is really famous. Tarmogoyf is really famous. But like none of those cards feel like they are what we're talking about when you mention an elf or a bird.
So some of the cards like Primeval Titan, some people brought up when I forgot to mention Primeval Titan in the TikTok video. The Rampant Growth was another one that I missed. Those are kind of two ones that people were like, oh, these. To me, it's Llanowar Elf. If I were to pick my personal one, and so other ones that people did show up, like Channel was another one, just going back to Alpha, and like it's the name of Channel Fireball, similar to how Jace is iconic due to its name. Channel, because of its relationship to Channel Fireball, has like been able to survive even though you can't play it in any format. There was, just like a few different other options, but I agree with you. I think like those Fog was another one that people brought up, which I loved. But Spore Frog, come on, it's just strictly better. It's not.
Are you affected at all by the fact that the printing of Elvish Mystic, does that affect your, like, when you think about it?
So it's interesting that you say that. It's weird. Because when we get to white, I actually like took points off from Swords and Path because they were like competing with each other. But in the formats where they're legal, they see play together, right? Like it's not like Llanowar Elf in Modern. In Elves, they're like, oh, we'll play Elvish Mystic or Llanowar Elf. It's like, no, we play all 8. Like that's a deck that wants as many as possible. The reason I like it more than Birds is two reasons. One is I think the elf creature type matters. Birds of Paradise is almost a gold card too, where it's like, yes, it's about green, but it's more about you're playing it with other colors. And 3, it has flying. I actually think that like kind of discounts it to me.
Makes it less green. Yeah.
It's not it like if I showed this to someone, they're like, oh cool, green cards can fly. And they're like, oh no, this is the only one. This and like and Hornet Queen. These are the 2 cards that can fly in green of all time. And it's like, that's weird to be the representation of a color. And like Llanowar Elf has just a little bit more longevity than the other options, right? Like once again, if you're talking to your buddy who played Magic back in the day or like plays Magic once a year, and you're like, oh, what do you remember Llanowar Elf? They're like, oh yeah, the card that you can tap to put a forest into play. And you're like, no, wait, that's not how the rules work.
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned the thing about, because my first thought really was Birds. I texted you a list of the ones my first thoughts, and Birds is the card that feels like sort of the best, but I think all the things you mentioned actually do take away some of the green quality of Birds of Paradise. And if we're really trying to associate the iconic card that feels like its color, I actually do think it becomes a toss-up between Primeval Titan and Llanowar Elf. And it is probably Elf, but that weird thing of the Elvish Mystic problem, the fact that you play both of them in a format that you can, doesn't take away from the fact that like it just got replaced. That makes it feel for some reason less iconic, which is so friggin' strange that they did that. I still don't really get it. Like
they did it for two reasons. One, it is more powerful that you can get 8 copies into play, right? Like that is a strategic, like it's a card that being able to play with 8 in your deck is cool. B, it was a grammatical issue. So when they did it, it's also when they made grizzly bears into ruin bears, because they decided, and it's Land of War elves, but it's featuring 1 elf.
Interesting.
And then the third one is because it's non-localized, right? Land of War elves can only be printed on a set where Land of War exists. So you can only be in core sets or Dominaria.
That aspect I totally understand. And I do understand that's one of the decisions that goes into stuff like that sometimes. And so I get it. But when I think about iconic, it does kind of take away from it. Yeah. We didn't mention Giant Growth either, which is like one of the other.
Oh, I also in the TikTok, Giant Growth did come up, but the other one was Giant Spider.
Giant Spider.
And not because it like, well, it's kind of iconic, right? Like, but it is the most printed core set card of all time, most consecutive times in a core set. So that like felt like a thing to bring up. But yes, I think of them, Giant Growth is like really on the edge of also being a red and a white ability to me. Yeah. Like it's the one that shares. No other color could get like a Land of War elf really that does that. And I think that puts it over the top for me.
I think that the other thing that makes Land of War elf the choice is that a green card that has a green mana symbol in its ability is one of the most green things ever. Like tap to add green, like green tapping to add green feels like such a green classic Magic thing. That almost the gold aspect of Birds of Paradise makes the card feel less green and is just less. I guess it's just less easy to understand. Why does this 0/1 flying bird give me any color? You know,
it's also more evocative, right? Like if I hand someone this that doesn't play Magic, they're like, oh yeah, I get it. Like the green mana Magic is about elves, these like forest creatures making more forests. And that's what they're about.
Preserving the forest or something.
If I hand them a Birds of Paradise, like, oh, that's weird. Birds are and like, especially because like in every other part of Magic, birds are a blue-white thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons to me. As much as I love Birds of Paradise, right, and like Noble Hierarch, as far as like the things, Noble Hierarch is better than Land of War Elf. Elvish Mystic is competitive. You have what's it called as well? Deathrite Shaman.
Findhorn Elves. I mean, there's a ton of mana creatures. Yeah. Boreal Druid, but there's Elves of Deep Shadow. But yeah, I actually like your choice on that one a lot. It feels like in this case, the old classic card does win the battle over Prime Time, and I think I'd vote for that one with you.
All right, now we're gonna do an easy one, and this one, like, I don't think there's another card that comes close. I don't think there's and people brought them up, and I was like, nope, this. And then everyone was like, but you're right. Like people jokingly tried disagreeing as I am wont to do. But the color is red and the card is Lightning Bolt. And I just don't think there's another. I don't think there's another card.
It's one of the most iconic. I mean, that's what I texted you, right? It's one of the most iconic Magic cards ever printed. It's the best. And when I say this, it's the best of the cycle of 3 for 1, not in power level, because obviously drawing 3 cards for 1 is better. But it's the best in the sense that it's just the most classic. Like it works in every format. It has worked since the inception of Magic. It's never felt so overpowered that it's not a fun card to have. It's not very fun if I'm playing fair Magic and you play Ancestral Recall. Like
or Dark
that doesn't
Ritual.
Feel fair or fun at all. But if I Lightning Bolt you or one of your creatures, even though if it's pushed, it's still super fun. Like it's just a normal ability, but it feels like exactly what you want for 1 red. So I mean, you mentioned Wheel of Fortune. That's pretty iconic, but not the same level. Shivan Dragon for the classic iconography, but that's just for the classic nature of it. Fireball, but not really.
Fireball, but is hurt by the fact that it's not Blaze or whatever, right? Like the fact that it has like the weird 3 extra lines of additional text that lets you target the extra things.
Oh yeah.
Makes Fireball lose it for me. You have like there's like Sneak Attack, right? There's cool Gamble. A lot of people brought up Gamble, Faithless Looting, and Wheel of Fortune. Those are the 3 most common possible alternatives to Lightning Bolt, but like every single comment was like, I would say gamble, except Lightning Bolt might be the perfect magic card.
Whereas with the other colors we've talked about so far, I do actually think there's a real conversation. You're like talking yourself into something if you try to get away from Lightning Bolt here, just because like if you want to talk about like what does a given color do, what is it represented by? Red is represented by burn damage. This is the most iconic burn damage spell ever, and it's not close. So this just absolutely is the answer. I'm sorry, guys, for the red section on this being so short, but I just don't really know how the hell we're supposed to talk about it. Like, I mean, because like, okay, let's say that it wasn't Lightning Bolt. Let's say Lightning Bolt just was somehow not available to us. We couldn't vote for it.
It was banned since alpha, and so no one's ever played it. The copies are impossible to get your hands on. It's like rarer than Ancestral Recall.
Is it Wheel of Fortune then? Is that, I mean, feels like Faithless Looting. Looting is really iconic. Like it's been banned. It's been played to a zillion decks. The problem
with Looting and the Wheel of Fortune is they're kind of blue abilities, right? Like especially Faithless Looting is actually a blue ability. Like once again, if I show someone Faithless Looting, they're going to be like, that's what, so red's the card draw. Especially if we show them as a set and I show them blue as counterspell and I show them red as Faithless. We're like, oh, red's the card draw one, right? Like, wait, no.
Yeah.
Goblin Guide, maybe. If we want to go something on the ground.
Like a Goblin card.
Gamble
I was trying to think if there was a Goblin card.
Like, doesn't feel correct.
Gamble's not right. I mean, that's...
Sneak Attack. Sneak Attack I don't hate, actually. I also don't hate Threaten to some extent. If we want to go to like some basic, that's just like limited only mechanics.
These are all bad options. It's just so funny. It's like it's just so clearly Lightning Bolt.
Let's be honest. The best option is Shock. After Lightning Bolt. Fair. If Lightning Bolt wasn't available, we would just pick Shock.
Or like Incinerate or something.
Every format ever. Or what's the 3 damage to target creature, a player for 1 and a red? There's like 2 of them now.
There's like 3 of them. Lightning Strike.
Yeah, Lightning Strike.
Incinerate. And there's also the other one, which is hell is the other one? Lightning Strike.
Recent. It's like a limited. It was something. It was like Magma. Something. It was like something different to keep it flavorful to the world. Yeah, like none of the Chandras come to mind. Like work really. Like they all represent red really well, but none of them are as famous as like any of these.
There's those cards. Like Young Pyro's pretty famous at this point. Yeah. Kiki Jiki's pretty famous at this point.
Once again, Young Pyro is a green and white card.
Yeah, it's true. Like red thing that makes tokens. Yeah, I mean, honestly, everything we're even talking about, if we were going to get away from Lightning Bolt, it almost just feels like Shivan Dragon jumps most of those because it's the most iconic dragon in Magic history.
That was the other one that people kept bringing up. Or I guess I keep saying that, but a bunch of people brought up Shivan Dragon, and it was definitely like, yeah, except like this hasn't been tournament playable since 1997.
Like 1993. Yeah.
And maybe even then it wasn't.
I just think it's definitely Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. So. Yep. So the next color we're going to talk about, and honestly, the next 2 were the hardest too. I think the first 3 we went over actually were much easier. I mean, blue is debatable, but I think you actually just bailed it down to 3. The next one, there's like 30 options, and I'm between 2 possible options, and I actually just recorded a TikTok, and then halfway through the TikTok with a plan to talk about a card, I was like, oh wait, it's this card. And so I'm gonna change my mind here. So you can go tell TikTok Alex that he's an idiot. But it's black. The color black.
So that's so interesting because I was sure with the preamble you were just giving right now that you were going to say this was white. Because when I think about iconic cards in black, and I really truly boil it down in my mind, I feel like there's one option.
So the one option that I know you picked was the one I picked in my TikTok.
It's got to be Demonic Tutor. How is it not Demonic Tutor? They're like, what black card is more when you're a kid and you get into Magic? When I was a little kid, you're like, oh my God, this card gets me any card in my deck. It was just as cool then as it is now when I draw it in a game of Commander. Like it's the best tutor ever. It is super iconic. Like the art is really iconic. What would even compete at this point?
So my pick is Reanimate. Would be my pick for the most iconic black card. Similar conversation, still really good in Commander, really powerful, too powerful to print in Standard. Very iconic. Once again, represents what the color is doing. Probably the better version of Dark Ritual to represent what black does. Speaking of other options, Dark Ritual is an option here, right? it's now a red ability is I think the biggest thing that hurts Dark Ritual more than anything. Otherwise, I think it would be really iconic, other than the fact that if I showed this to someone, they would think black does this and it doesn't. Demonic Tutor is hurt to me because it is no longer like tutoring isn't it. Yes, just straight up 1-for-1 getting a tutor is a black ability, but blue can tutor, red can tutor, white can tutor, green tutors almost as good as or more often than black, right? Like it only tutors for creatures, but it does it way more often.
Yeah.
And so to me, like that loses a little bit of a specialist, but in your defense, Demonic Tutor was my pick, right? In the video, I like go through them, and then halfway through the video, I remember that Reanimate exists, and you can like literally hear my brain pause and be like, "Oh damn, I like that card more than my choice." But Demonic Tutor was my choice then, and I think it's really high up there, right? It is the best at what it does. Or it's not the best of what it does, but it's the most pure. In the same way, Counterspell is not necessarily the best. Force of Will exists. You can do it for free. Mana Drain exists. You get mana off of it. There are tutors in green, like Convoke. What's the Convoke one?
Court of Calling.
Yeah, you have Court of Calling, which puts the creatures into play and can be cast for free. You have stuff like Vampiric Tutor, which can be done for a mana less than a life cost, kind of like Force of Will. So, and at instant speed. So there are like tutors that are maybe better, but none of them are like tutor for a card in your library, put it in your hand. Right? And like Demonic Tutor is that. So to that extent, I do think Demonic Tutor is up there. Reanimate to me though, putting a creature from your graveyard into play is more representative of what black is about, regardless of era, right? Like tutoring is now much more of an uncommon thing for black to do, but like every limited environment under the sun still has like the 5 mana reanimate a creature, like, and Reanimate just being the best version of that's super iconic. And it has the life payment attached, which is also one of the most black ability things that I can think of. Feels to me like a great example of here, random person at a bar. This is the most black thing you can do. Or like this is what the color black is about. And they're going to be like, cool, I have to get stuff into the graveyard and bring it back to life. That's super evocative versus, yeah.
Your defense, the part that stands out the most, that I actually think is the most interesting in your argument, is that the life loss angle is an inherently black ability, which I think actually is a really interesting point you make, because it adds to the other half of the ability, which is just the resurrection side that like does feel very black. But here's the thing. Animate Dead existed before Reanimate. So did Dance of the Dead. So did Resurrection. Now, none of those have the life pay thing, but they all were still doing similar things. And none of those things feel anywhere near as iconic as Demonic Tutor. I also think, and this is really to me where it stands out, if I think about growing up playing Magic and like the first 10 years of my life as a Magic player, there were certain images that always were just like ironed onto my brain. And the Demonic Tutor image is pretty close to the top of the single most iconic and memorable images that I can remember on a Magic card. Like, also Magic, when you're a little kid, the black cards have this like very evil, demonic, satanic sort of feel. And so like the idea that there's this like demon tutor and he's like really cool looking, I don't know, that just, for me, nothing really compares. I do like the life loss aspect of Reanimate, but I think it's hurt by the fact that the other reanimation spells that existed before just didn't have the same kind of impact.
So speaking of extremely important black abilities, speaking of life loss, what about Thoughtseize?
I mean, that was higher on my list, honestly, than Reanimate. But to me, it still felt like they have been making Duresses and Inquisitions of Kozilek's and tons of other abilities like that for years and years and years. And while Thoughtseize is definitely the best one, it feels like it's more iconic as a played tournament card, like the best version of a thing, than Demonic Tutor, which is like just a forever Magic card. Like people that started in the beginning know that card, all the way up to people who started last year know that card. Everybody knows Demonic Tutor. And if you don't play 1v1 Magic, if you're just a Commander player, you've probably never cast Thoughtseize. Really?
That's fair. Okay. Well, I guess the last one in the black world that was under consideration is Liliana the Veil, the other Planeswalker that I think could be on the most iconic cards list.
Yeah.
Right. There's not a green one. There's not a white one. Yeah, I'm going to go with Liliana the Veil. I think that could also compete with these two. Like, it also has a similar thing that Jace does where, like, all of its abilities are representative. Remove sacrifice plus discard. You have to do the discard as well, so it's a little bit like you pay for it with the ability you're getting. But yeah, I think it's Demonic Tutor Reanimate. I think I agree with you. It's between those two, and I like Demonic Tutor a lot. So yeah, so that'll be the black side of the mana pool.
All right.
Now we're going to get into the other difficult one, and that's white. White one was a weird one. Like there's a few options. Like the two most obvious I think that people pointed to were Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshare, and like this is the one where I did knock it down for there being two of the same effect that would be very difficult to choose between. Partially because Swords of Plowshare hasn't extended into the future the way that Lana Warelf has, right? Like Lana Warelf is still played in Standard, was more recently printed into Standard, is played in Modern, alongside Elvish Mystic. You play them both together. Path to Exile and Sword of Plowshare, when you play on a commander, whatever, you play together. But if you have a choice of getting four of, you don't play both of them. In Legacy, you only play swords, and in Modern, you can play swords. You play Path. And so, to me, that's a much harder one to decide between. So then you leave that. One thing that the internet did bring up with like Thalia, that was another, like going into more creatures. But what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so the first thought that I had, because obviously we're competitive players, so like things that are cheaper, that are more ubiquitous in multiple formats are the first thoughts, right? So Path and swords, I would lean towards swords, I think, over Path, just if in that conversation. Not that I think either one of those is the answer, but just because, again, if we're talking about iconography, like iconic, the older you are, the more the card's been around, I feel like the more points you get. Path has been around for quite a while. You know, Thalia creatures, like that doesn't feel exactly on the nose for me. The card really that stood out in my mind when I tried to think about this, and this was one of the ones where I really leaned on that Magic history, Shivan Dragon kind of iconography, was Sarah Angel. And that, it feels to me like of all of the kind of classic like images of what Magic was about, Sarah Angel was a tournament card in its day. It was very good. They printed it as uncommon in many, many core sets. And it was always like a great card. Like you'd pick that first pack, first pick, often and limited. But also like 5 mana, 4/4 flying vigilance angel. There's just something about it. It's been emblazoned in my mind as a Magic card for such a long time. This is one where I would lean on not the power of the card, but the actual iconography and the history to qualify. So I think I would submit that as my choice.
See, like the problem with that is that just like it hasn't been tournament viable for my entire Magic career. And I've been playing for 12 years, right? Like, and like, yes, it's good and like limited, but there's also like boomer Magic vibes with Sarah Angel. Like if you
big time,
like walk into any modern day, like someone who started playing the last 5 years, they might not even know what that card's called. Right. Like if you're like, what's like, in fact, there are going to be more. There's like, what's a 4/4 flyer with vigilance? And they're going to be like, oh, it's a green black card because of that the test for the Great Design Search. Do you know this meme?
No.
So they did like the last Great Design Search 3. They did a multiple choice test to get past the first round. And one of the questions was if we were to print a card that had to be that had to be gold or two colors. It had to be two colors and it had the abilities flying and vigilance. What color would it be? And the correct answer was green black, which they would never print that card because it's weird, but it's the only two colors that are gold that don't have white in it that are allowed to have flying and vigilance.
Interesting.
Because green has vigilance and black has flying. So by putting them together, you could have a flying vigilance 4/4. You could have Sarah Angel, it can't be white. So people disagreed with how that test was written for that one question, but enough people, like 20 people got it right. So those 20 people moved to the second round and they had some amazing designers came from that test. So who are we to judge? But that's like the joke, right? Is like, that's more of a meme now than what Sarah Angel is. And to me, like, to be honest, if I were to pick an actual, I think like Elsbeth Night Errant is maybe an option.
the original Elspeth's like super, very iconic in the same sort of Jace the Mind Sculptor world. Character that went on to be very important, but a very meaningful planeswalker at the time.
And,
I think, and like if we're going to talk about,
her story wise, like she came back, but like the cards other than that original card, that's not totally true. The 6 mana one's like bonkers, but the most recent one wasn't that good. So it does hark back to that original one. Elspeth that Conquers Death is like one of the most tournament played cards right now. And that's a reference to that kind of era of card. So I think that's pretty representative. Now what were you going to say?
There's like a bunch of cards that come to mind that were like very impactful and have a long history and sort of legacy to their appeal. Like I think Baneslayer Angel is a card that's really famous in white, kind of took the place of Sarah and is probably a much more known card. I think like Oblivion Ring is a card that was kind of changed what white was about. That like became a really big part of what white was supposed to be. I think Stoneforge Mystic. That's banned.
That's my pick, by the way.
Stoneforge?
Yeah. I would pick Stoneforge Mystic. I think like it created the concept of the 2-drop cycle. Like it just followed immediately by Snapcaster Mage. It like was banned for so long, but it was always kind of talked about as a thing you can come off the ban list, similar to Jace the Mind Sculptor, banned for the same reasons as Jace, kind of became an important card like right when Magic's heyday started. Like, you know, M10 into Zendikar was like that big moment that Magic came back, and Stoneforge Mystic was such a big part of that. It also does like a few things that are really like key to white, right? It like finds an equipment. It's a low to the ground creature. And has like kind of that tutor effect to it that white can do. I don't know. I feel like that's to me like one of the more iconic white cards of all time. Like I don't like I like O-Ring. I don't actually disagree with the O-Ring pick. I think that's another really good one. That was something someone brought up that just like,
well, because yeah, for those listening that don't know this, I mean, white didn't used to have that banishing light ability. That wasn't something that existed. So when Lorwyn came out and they printed Oblivion Ring, it was, you know, like Faith's Fetters had been a big card that people really liked. It was in Ravnica, and it didn't get rid of a permanent, but it invalidated a permanent. It was like a prison sort of effect. And you had things like pacifism, you know, that had done that for years. But when Oblivion Ring came out, it was very simple design. It was very good design. It felt representative of white. It was like some sort of a you know, you'd banish someone, right? And you had this like artifact that, you know, like I have this thing. And that is so much of a white thing now. They do that a lot, and they've been doing that for years ever since. But I also don't know that like they just changed the freaking name from Oblivion Ring to Banishing Light. Like there's 2 versions of it, and there's a billion creature versions. So I don't know that either one of those really stands out. Like I think I'm probably with you actually. I think Stoneforge's a pretty good pick.
It's like just like its PR is really good. Plus, it's like the Herald and Nahiri existing, right? Like it's the first, and cores go back all the way back to Tempest with the end cores. So like even as a creature type, they've been around for a while. And yeah, if you gave it to a player, they'd be like, oh, I get what white's about. It's not like all that white's about, right? It's not the best example, but like, oh, it's about like it's the most like equipment focused. It's about like finding it. They might come away thinking that they're more artifact themed than necessarily are, but white's kind of second to art or third in artifacts after red and blue. So it's not out of their color pie. It's hardest
artifact heavy. Yeah.
I think white is the most difficult, kind of not ironically, but in a way that's funny with everyone's complaint about its power level. And it might just be Swords of Plowshare, right? Like I think that's another like just like maybe the correct answer. I think Path being the modern. The fact that there's a switch depending on which area you play in hurts Swords of the Plowshare, but I think that it might just be like, since it's the best version, it's simple, it has the life gain effect, making it like kind of exactly what white is about. And I think that could be it too. Like, here's the most white card. Like, oh, it's about life gain and it can kill any creature. That's the weird thing, is like white can't really do Swords of the Plowshare anymore. So like, I mean, that leads me to Wrath of God as like the last option, which might be the answer.
It's Wrath of God. Yeah, it's absolutely Wrath of God. I can't believe I didn't think of that. Yeah, it is. Think about that. Think about that when you talk about what do colors do, and then also classically what do colors do, right? The idea of a 4 mana destroy all creatures spell. It is Wrath of God. That's the idea of what that is. When we compare every single Wrath, every single board wipe, anything that's ever been printed, it's always compared to that one card from the first Magic set. And as much as I think Stoneforge Mystic is a phenomenal option, and I think that, you know, Path and Swords are both great, like there's lots of 1-drop removal that is very good in all different colors, different ways. And there are tons and tons and tons of good 2-drops that do something great for their color. It was the first. It's still the standard. They don't print things that are better than Wrath of God today. Like they don't print things commonly.
Yeah, nothing better.
Yeah, but everything is compared to that original printing, which is. So I actually think it's Wrath of God.
It's Wrath of God. That'd be my vote. Yeah. Okay. I think that's fair. I think I can be convinced away from Stoneforge into Wrath of God. Yeah, because like for Stoneboards, you have to give context. You have to like, here's a Batterskull, and then like this is also part of this ability, and now you understand why this is a white card. But yeah, with Wrath of God, it's just like, nope, this is what it does. It's the one that's going to kill all the creatures. It's a
also,
little
white
out of
brings
context,
order, right? Like white brings order by destroying everything.
Yeah, it's its version of like its classic version of card advantage, which is really just removing your card advantage. So that's white, and I guess you on your list have the last color, which is the colorless color, and I think that this one is, I guess I'll also I have one other concept we can go over if we want, but as far as colorless goes, your answer here on what you texted me, which I just read halfway through, is Black Lotus. And I don't know if there's it's like another, it's unfair, but it's obviously the answer.
It's the answer for two reasons. It's the rare example of a card being the most expensive for also just being the best card. Like, it's the simplest, most like busted Magic card ever printed. Like, we all know that fast mana is the way that you win, and like this is just 3 mana for nothing, so it's crazy. But also for the fact that Magic, its identity as a collectible, its identity as a like valuable collectible, like it's the fact you might not even know anything about Magic, but you would probably still know the name Black Lotus if it ever came up because it's been referenced so many times. It is the most iconic Magic card, period. Mm-hmm. So there couldn't really be anything that would compare to this. I mean, nothing. Like, people don't play Magic know what this is.
Yeah, like that's the card everyone knows. It's the Michael Jordan rookie card. It's the Babe Ruth signed rookie card. You know, like it's the card. It's the Charizard Shadow 4th edition. You know, like it's the card everyone on the planet who has heard about Magic knows about. And like, even if you want to remove the power like 9 from being in consideration, it's Soul Ring, right? Like, I guess like if I was to take the power 9 out of the conversation, it's Soul Ring.
Yeah.
And like, even then it's like, yeah, but that's because it's just like kind of Black Lotus mocks in. Like, yeah, I think it's Black Lotus and it's not close.
Solemn Simulacrum, Mere Superior. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely it's Mere Superior. You're right. It's Mere Superior. How dare we insinuate that it's anything but that? Fun fact: Mere Superior, I believe, can be cast with the mana from a Black Lotus, right? Or no, it can't. It has to be creature mana.
It has to be created by a creature.
Okay, so
but
you can't
be
Dark
able
Ritual.
To be cast with the new Diamond Lion thing.
Nice.
I can lion-side diamond creature to cast my Mere Superior.
Diamond Lion is the correct is the name of it for sure. You have to like,
but I'll have to. The irony is I will have to discard my Mere Superior to use it, which is a shame.
No, yeah. To do it, you need to Lion's Diamond or Diamond Lion. Then play Think Twice, and the top card of your library has to be Mere Superior. Even then, no. Is there a card draw that you can do from your great? I guess you could. What's it called? Tutor for a Mere Superior, but then it costs 2 mana. So even then, you're not even getting it. Is there a 1 mana effect that lets you Lion's Diamond Lion Mere Superior into play? You can claim fame. Oh no, you can't even claim fame. I don't think you can
claim fame. I mean, yeah, because Diamond Lion just gets you. Oh, but you need to have it in your hand.
I don't think there is.
we can figure out a way. We can make Diamond Lion work with Mere Superior.
I got it. You Diamond Lion. Nope.
I was going to ask you. I didn't write down this, but
I got it. Okay, you have Crystal Shard in play and the Mere Superior already in play. Lion's Diamond, discarding your hand. You Crystal Shard the Mere Superior back to your hand, and then you cast it.
And then you recast it like a champion.
There we go. I was like, there's got to be a way in Magic to do this. There's nothing that's not possible in Magic. All right.
I was going to ask you if you thought there was a land. I had thought about this a little bit, and like, I could think of ones that felt super duper iconic in terms of their all-time play. Like, there's some few cards like Maze of Ith that I feel like are just known and loved, and but like, is there a single land? Is it Underground Sea? Because it's like land? The one.
Oh yeah, City of Brass.
City of Brass, really?
It's the one land that it's like the most iconic 5-color like, if you were to pick a land to show people what land do, this is it. Like, they tap for mana.
Maze of Ith doesn't even tap for mana. That's weird.
Like, this not only does this tap for mana, but like, hey, some lands don't cost life. They only get you 1 mana. This one Gets you any mana, but it costs you a life. I don't know if there's anything else. Like all the other ones have weird abilities, right? Like that don't matter, right? Like most like intense, most powerful lands of all time. There's like Bizarre Bad Dad. You mentioned Mazavith. There's Library of Alexandria. There's Ayabugan. There's Tabernacle. There's Caracas. There's Mystic Confluence. Well, Mystic Confluence, if you want to talk about City of Brass, but there's the new one, the Snapcaster Mage. That's a creature. That's a land. The blue, it's an island. You get a card from your library graveyard. Put it in.
Mystic Sanctuary.
Mystic Sanctuary. Yeah. Okay, I got the Mystic half correct. And then obviously you have dual lands and fetch lands and. Well,
that's what I was thinking. Like,
is it Evolving Wilds?
Say what?
Is it Evolving Wilds?
Terramorphic Expanse type. None of these lands like are just the clear answer. Even City of Brass, like that's just not the clear answer. I feel like honestly, if you're going to go with what the clear answer is, it's probably Underground Sea. It's probably Underground Sea because it's the most expensive. It's the most sought after dual land. Dual lands are far and away the most iconic rare lands. Like they are, unless you're going to say that it's like Library of Alexandria, just because it's like, but that's like nobody even plays with that card. But like people play with Underground Sea all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a good answer for land.
I don't like. You got to have one, and like I don't like it being just like, oh, it's the blue-black one of the cycle. I don't think that like.
Yeah,
I like Terramorphic Expanse. I'm gonna go with Terramorphic Expanse, and the internet can fight me. I think it's like the perfect limited card. Every limited format should have a or Evolving Wilds. Sorry, I think as much as I like Terramorphic Expanse more than Evolving Wilds is just a more common version of it. So it's Evolving Wilds. I'm gonna go with Evolving Wilds.
Mutavault. What about Mutavault? No.
No, it's close though.
Colonnade. I don't know. Yeah, I mean they're like
the Tron lands, but that's three. That's three things.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they're I don't think because there's like really powerful ones. There's like Mishra's Factory. Wait, Workshop? Which is the one that taps for 3? Workshop, right?
Well, and Factory is a good option. I guess that's the one that you can make a 2/2, right? That's like the first creature spell.
Yeah.
Inkmoth Nexus.
Yeah, none of these are convincing me. I just don't think that there's a good option for lands because the problem is it's cycles. If we're gonna go with okay, the most iconic land cycle is the original dual land cycle. Yeah. I think we can agree there, correct?
Yeah. Maybe fetch lands, but but it's one of those two. Yeah. Well, like fetch lands see more play, right? Like they are just legal in more formats and more people own them.
And there are more of them, yeah.
just by quantity alone, they are more common.
Yeah.
So on TikTok, if you want to follow at Kess Wiley on TikTok, I am going to go through all the gold colors now. In the black one, I asked for people to give me. I guess I have to do artifacts still, so I'll probably release that tomorrow. While I wait to see what people want for gold. I got an Azorius and a Golgari vote, but let's see what's going on there. Really quick.
All right, let me ask you this.
Okay, yeah. Ask me a question.
Oh no, you asked me a question. What do you got?
most iconic Azorius card.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask because that's your favorite color, and I'm gonna ask you the same question but it's gonna be most iconic. Is it? So there you go. We're asking. Okay, let me think. You think and I'll think. Blue white, most iconic blue white gold card. I mean, like ones that come to mind. 5-mana Teferi is really iconic now. That matters a lot. I feel like Geist is pretty. Well, no, Geist is not iconic in the same way. Teferi is way more iconic than Geist. Probably Teferi. I mean, that's where I'm leaning. I'm just trying to think if there's like a really famous blue-white card that Meddling Mage is pretty famous, but it's really only gotten significant again because of the Humans deck. Prior to that, it was just like a bargain basement rare for years.
There's like the counter spell that gains you 3 life. My pick was Sphinx's Revelation was what I thought of. Teferi might be in the long run, it might be Teferi, but I think we'll get more and more Teferis, which will kind of muddle that. Where Sphinx's Rev was so defining, has seen modern play. I
mean, 3 Teferi is almost as good as 5-mana Teferi also. So.
That's kind of the problem, right? Like they're just going to keep printing really good Teferis.
Yeah, for sure.
And then as far as Izzet goes, that one's hard. I think like part of me wants to say Electrolyze. Part of me wants to say Fire and Ice. Part of me wants to say Goblin Electromancer.
What about Dak?
It's not. Yeah, maybe he hasn't seen real tournament play ever because he's never been legacy playable. And he's never been legal in any other format that you could see tournament play. Maybe he's seen vintage play, but who knows what's happening in vintage? The blue, maybe Niv Mizzet. Like, to be honest, like original Niv
Which
Mizzet.
one? Oh, okay. Firemind.
Yeah, just as like a representation of blue red mana, and the fact that he was like one of the premier commanders for so long, and you could do the combo with him so easily, and that was so scary back in the day, and just as a character has become so important. I think he has the most printings of any character, or he's like tied with most printings of any legendary creature.
Fire Ice. I mean, I like your Fire Ice pick, but yeah, it's funny how neither one of them really has a slam dunk. I mean, neither one of those two, and they're two of the most popular color combos ever.
Well, remember when we did our count? I don't think we ever even finished, but we did our countdowns, and it ended up that most of the color combos don't have very many good gold options. The colors together, when they're working together, are amazing because Snapcaster Mage plus Lightning Bolt is amazing, and Path to Exile plus Snapcaster Mage is amazing because Snapcaster Mage is amazing. But the actual gold cards were kind of lame. I think green white was the deepest at the time, though now I think blue green is way deeper. I think that's changed.
So funny.
We've also gone to a Ravnica since we were doing those countdowns. We've gone to Strixhaven. We've gone to a pretty large quantity of different planes that gold mechanics were more prevalent. So I think that has grown, which is why blue green has come so far. So Ikoria, which is a 3-color set. So yeah, it's interesting. But that's it for this as episode. One final announcement is we're actually opening up our Discord to just the public. We did a thing where we kind of called it down, made it only for patrons. It ended up that just kind of I think for patrons, they are looking for just more interaction, which means more people. And we just want it to be a little bit more active. So you'll get to there. We're going to have a bunch of cool emotes from Twitch that you'll be able to also access in our Discord, which will be really cool. And just, it's a fun place. We want to make it especially now that people can play tabletop games again and Modern's back, we want to make a friendly community for people who want to play Modern. So definitely check that out. There's a link to the Discord below. And then it'll be shared on Twitter, etc. So definitely make sure to check that out. Beyond that, once again, TikTok. If you're looking for TikTok content, I'm doing a bunch of Modern content there. Follow me. I did I'm doing a whole review of every single card on the Modern ban list. I'm up to Dread Return. I'm in the D's currently. I'm doing it alphabetically. So if you want more Modern content, I'm doing the review of every single card on the Modern ban list and want to answer questions. I'm excited to be making more content there. And then obviously our Monday night streams. We did tonight. We have I forget what we have. Oh, Mental Misplay, I think is going to be on there. And then let me look it up because I am forgetting. I have a list already brought out. It is Mental Misplay and Eidolon of Blossoms from TikTok. A TikTok person. Right, that's it. Okay, I remember what's happening. Mental Misplay is joining us and Eidolon of Blossoms. And we're going to be jamming some games. So we'll check you guys out tonight on Monday.
Sweet. Thanks for watching another great episode, guys. Be sure to check out patreon.com/TheMMcast. Support what we're doing. It means the world to us. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't already hit subscribe, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up on the video. Leave your comments. You agree with our picks? Did you think that we picked awesome things? Did you disagree? Did we miss something obvious? We probably did. Let us know in the comments. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching and listening to another episode of the MMcast.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you guys next week.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.